Welcome back to Burnout Bets, another episode as we get closer to qualifications for the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500. Tony D, Mike with you at Indy_bet, at Tony D Indy. Ceasar, some big news came down from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that they have partnered with IMS to be the official partner in the gambling world of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and all the events that take place at the world's greatest race course. We will discuss that, look at some of the odds, look back to last week. So much to talk about, Mike. It's great to be back here with you.
Yeah, man, Tony, I about jumped out of my chair when I saw that news with Ceasar's partnering with IMS. I mean, huge news for IndyCar and betting. You got to think that IndyCar is not far behind. You know, I've been talking about this stuff for years. I felt like I was on an island. Finally, IndyCar catching up to the likes of the NFL and every other major sporting league out there, F1, NASCAR, all of them, with all the the gambling stuff and the wagering we got going on. So really excited for this year's 500. I'm hoping we get even more options. We get them sooner. Again, we're going to be here. I'm excited to talk about all the stuff leading up to the race, leading up to qualifying, and everything we're going to have coming next week.
Yeah, we got qualifying coming up this weekend, and then we'll be back next week for another episode of the Burnout Bet Show. And yeah, it was cool. I got lucky. I happened to go check out the Ceasar's sportsbook inside Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, a lot of people were asking the question, can you physically go in there and print your ticket like you can at the place downtown, which a lot of people like to have that physical ticket. As of right now, they don't have any kiosks set up. It's just basically if you put $20 in, you get 106 in free bets. They had a cash bar in there as well, but it was really cool. So if you missed my conversation with Doug Bowles, check out Burnout Bets, Burnout Sports, or Tony the Indy, just talking about that and just how big that is. Mike, I just want to go back to kind of what you just said and get your opinion, though. My initial thought was, okay, it's about time. This has been legal in the state of Indiana for 2.5, almost 3 years. But to see them take this next step is certainly huge for the gambling world, for IndyCar, for the Indy 500, and bringing in new fans to the sport.
Yeah, look, big first step. Hopefully you see IndyCar follow suit. You would assume maybe partnering with Caesars, maybe DraftKings, FanDuel. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there. Barstool's big in Indiana. You got companies, as we see sports gambling, crisscross the country here. I know you can check out the Action Network. They do a lot of coverage on the state of sports betting, no matter what state you're watching this from. If you're wondering where your state is as far as the legislation goes. I know I live in a state that's still technically not legal for sports betting. So hopefully we'll see that soon in Florida where I'm at. This is a huge first step. I've been harping on this stuff for times. Hopefully, we could talk about the fantasy industry as well and daily fantasy. That's probably a whole nother podcast we can have. I'd love to see that in the future. We've seen F1 just get picked up by DraftKings. Like to see IndyCar kind of follow suit with that. I think there's a huge following and market to be had there. But to me, man, it's all about growing the sport. And I think this is just IndyCar. They've been behind the times as far as I'm concerned with the wagering. And this is, hopefully they catch up. And, I'm all about, I'm a huge IndyCar fan before I could walk. So I want to see them grow the sport. And I think this is a great way for them to do that.
Yeah, and right now, most of the sports books have Indy 500 betting. You have the NBC Predictor app that already has their Indy 500 game up. IndyCar, inside of its own app, has a fantasy challenge for both Fast Friday qualifying and then the Indianapolis 500. All right, before we get into the odds for the race, let's go back to Saturday real quick. I was very close with my Simon Pagenaud to win. The King of the Rain, as I called him when I saw him on yesterday, finishes second. Colton Herta at 14-1 cashes in with the victory. I had Christian Lundgaard over Callum Ilott. I missed that. I mean, great for Callum Ilott to finish seventh. Lundgaard was eighth. But how did you do in the Indy Grand Prix in the rain at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway over the weekend?
Oh, man, what a race. What a race if you had some wagering on it. What a race if you didn't. It was one of the best races. I thought it was entertaining. The way I put it, when I put it out on my Twitter after I posted my betting card, the word washout was appropriate for me. I do this. This is for fun. It's to add some entertainment, to use some statistics and use some history and talk with guys like you guys and have a good time. I felt great going into that race. I had willpower at 9-1. Hindsight, God, I feel like if it was a dry race, we didn't have that rain. Mother Nature cooperated. Will probably was fast. He loves that track. I would have been sitting pretty at a 9-1 pre-qualifying ticket. So whenever you hit that, we talk about this all the time. You're trying pre-qualifying, you're trying to get a ticket on who you think is going to win the poll. When you nail that, you're in a great spot to make money. I had top threes on Rosenquist and Award. That looked great throughout half the race. Then they decided to crash into each other. I was ready to throw something. The next thing you know, Award's right back there. I had an Award to win ticket. And then he's got the slicks on at the end. And I'm thinking, okay, is this going to work? Didn't work. But talk about excitement, talk about drama. Credit to Herta. He jumped on those slicks early. That was a huge move. And he was able to, I guess he was able to drift his car around the track to a win. But yeah, not a great week betting for me. I was hoping to get a little bit extra money in the account to put on the 500, but that's okay. That's just like they say, that's racing, that's gambling. Sometimes, Mother Nature has other ideas, and so does racing in general.
Don't forget to follow us, Burnout Bets, on Twitter, Burnout Sports, at Indy_bet, at Tony D Indy. All right, let's look at these odds for the 106 Indianapolis 500 from Ceasar's. We have done the show a couple times over the last month or two since the odds originally came out for the 500. They certainly have changed. I have Simon Pagenaud at 28-1. He's down to 18-1. Somebody like Alex Palou, who was 18-1 to start, is now down to 9-1. So a lot of movement. Still Scott Dixon at top of the board at 7-1, followed by Pato Award at 7-1. Then you get guys like Scott McLaughlin, Alex Palou in that 9-1 range. Elio, TK, Elio and TK at 16-1, then Pagenaud and Sato. Anybody inside of that 20-1 range stick out for you here, Mike?
No, like you said, we did the show a couple weeks ago on our first look. I as well am in on that Simon Pagenaud 28-1. Obviously now I wouldn't bet it. I think if anything, it's going to get better unless he snags, a top 5, top 6 spot on the grid. You mentioned it. A lot of the numbers have gotten slashed from the opening lines. If history serves, you're going to see a lot of these numbers tick up as we get closer to race time after qualifying. The guys that obviously do qualify in that top, 3 rows, you might see them go down a little bit, especially if you get one of these long shots that happens to nail one of those spots or makes that Fast 9 list. But otherwise, I probably going to hold off if, not what I would recommend for people. If you're planning to bet the 500, if you like some of the long shots in there, you think they could qualify well, yeah, that's where you want to throw a couple bucks on. If not, we're going to talk about these matchups. That's interesting to me. We'll talk more about that. But I would kind of hold off on touching any of these numbers. I don't think they get much worse than they do, or much lower than they do. I think they mostly will only go up come race day.
Yeah, and the bets that I have locked in, I'm comfortable with. And, maybe if you're looking for somebody like a Connor Daly or Ed Carpenter, who may go down a little bit if they do qualify inside of that Fast 12, if they have speed, maybe you want to hop on that now. But again, as we talked about, Caesars has these. They are now the official book of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But again, as Mike always preaches, make sure that you shop around and you're kind of getting out ahead of things, which you can do in IndyCar, because it seems like, they're obviously not the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball. So let's go ahead and take a look real quick, Mike, at the upcoming matchup bets that have been provided by Caesars as of, I believe, today. We'll just go right down the line. Graham Rahal versus Takuma Sato, former teammates. Sato has won this race twice. He was fast in the test. He's been fast so far during the opening week of practice. Rahal is a guy that has 2 third-place finishes in his career, had a great car in 19 before he wrecked, was obviously on the charge to possibly win last year before, if the freak tire flies off. If you were putting any scratch on this, who would you go with in the matchup battle between Rahal and Sato?
Yeah. So what's really cool before we get into some of these, I'd say what's really neat about Caesars putting these out is usually, matchup bets for IndyCar races don't come out until, hours before the race. Morning of is best you usually see. And most of the time, the sportsbooks are going to pair these matchups with people that are right next to each other on the grid. So you'd see Rahal starting 9th, Sato starting 10th, and then that's where they would derive the matchup from. a lot of that has to do with obviously the road course, street course positioning and passing, but even on ovals, they do that as well. So what's neat about this is we get to take a look at this and we can kind of make some predictions on, where we think guys are going to qualify. And if we can get some value on some of these matchups, and there could be some major discrepancies on the grid, which we could take advantage of, or just matchups we see based on our Indy 500 history and what we see in practice. So if these things are up and you guys, I preach to everybody, you watch the practice times, watch all the news. We obviously had the washout, earlier and part of one of our practices. So keep an eye, and then one of these things could offer some really good value. So it's really neat to see these things out before we have an actual grid. Back to Ray Hall Sato. I think Graham, I like Graham in that, even though Sato, I was there when Sato won. That was one of the 500s I've attended. I don't think I was too happy about it, but yeah, put me down for Graham on that one. Not a huge lean either way on that. I'd still, both those two guys I'm watching. Sato, he always seems to sneak up on the track, but I think Graham has some good history here as well.
Yeah, I think right now, just based on what we know, it's a little bit too tough for me to place anything on just yet. This is a post qualifying one for me. The next one is Jimmy Johnson at -125 over Juan Pablo Montoya at -105. The first thing you really notice in a lot of these, Mike, is you're not going to get a lot of plus money. There may be one or two where you get plus money. So that makes me think, I'm just kind of going to hold off. Johnson and Montoya is interesting. Johnson's been fast. He hasn't done 500 miles. Montoya, obviously out of his prime, in a third car at a team. But again, Montoya, all of a sudden last year, he was running inside of the top 10 and came home 10th. Maybe I lean a little bit Montoya just because he knows how to keep his equipment to the end of the day, and he's not going to make, those rookie mistakes that we could still see Jimmy Johnson make, whether it's your in or out lap, something in the pits or a mistake when that train is 6, 7, 8 cars long. So I would lean a little bit Montoya right here, but again, another just hold off and not play for me.
Oh man, I'm with you. I saw this matchup and I was like, I couldn't believe it was Montoya. As I scrolled down, I saw Jimmy, and I immediately was ready to come on here and tell you, like, give me whoever else. Jimmy. Yeah. It's his first 500. I've been very impressed at how fast he is in practice. I think he turned to 225 and on race trim, looking pretty good. He does have oval experience here, obviously not in an Indy car, but he's going to play it safe. I think he's going to make sure he doesn't hit the wall. He wants to take that car home for Carvana and the 500. That's, I think, a bigger deal just for him to finish the race. Montoya, we know that guy. He's going to, but he's got history. He always seems to move up the grid. I don't expect him to qualify well. So I'd actually, anybody but Montoya I would have liked here probably against Jimmy. But for everything you just said, I'm with you. I think Montoya is properly installed as the favorite. Or excuse me, Jimmy's the favorite here. I think that actually is wrong. I would have Montoya the favorite over Jimmy. So I do see value in getting Montoya almost even money. But, I wish it was, like I said, anybody but Montoya, that's where I would lean, though.
Moving down to the battle of the Swedes, Marcus Ericsson and Felix Rosenqvist. Ericsson in the Ganassi car that always has speed. He's been pretty consistent. He's had some good days at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He's had some bad days. Felix Rosenqvist, this one's tough because Felix has shown all year that he can qualify well. He had a pretty good run in the road course last week, but it just seems like he qualifies well and then fades. So for me, I could see Felix qualifying like 11th and Marcus qualifying 15th and this changing a little bit. I do like Marcus Ericsson, but I'm going to wait because I do think that Felix will qualify better, but I think Marcus Ericsson will be the better driver in the race.
Couldn't agree more. Same page. This is one, I'd probably lean the same way as you. Better race finish there. I think it's the numbers are good. -110, -120. I would think both these guys are a coin flip from what I've seen so far and their prior history here. So nothing really sticks out for this one either.
Yeah, and what we learned in last year's 500, and even in 2020, I know it ended, there was a red flag and Connor spun and you had the Spencer Pigot accident. But last year was super clean and super green besides Graham Rahal's incident. So, usually like 2018 when they had the different aero kits, it's a war of attrition, right? Who can just get to the end? And you would have a good chance in some of these matchup bets that, somebody's going to get taken out or somebody's going to be involved in an accident. But we just simply didn't see that last year. So these are all ones that could literally go down to lap number 200. Rinus VK, very fast at Carpenter Racing, minus 130 against Roman Grosjean, who is still finding his way around the oval at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He is even money. I do like Rinus here. I don't like paying that minus 130.
All right, so this is one I do like. This is one that I caught my eye. I don't think minus 130 is terrible for what you're getting with VK over Grosjean and his lack of experience. You just said it. I'm expecting a pretty clean race, and you see time and time again. Like, look, I made the bet on Helio last year at 40-1, based upon the fact that he knows his way around this track. He's obviously a 4-time winner, but at that time he was a 3-time winner. And that's what you see time and time again. If they have the equipment in the car, back to our Montoya point, like that, when the veterans have, like we'll get to one with TK here shortly. When they don't have the equipment, I think that's where I have pause. But when you have a veteran that has the equipment, I'm looking for those. But for this particular matchup, yeah, I think minus 130 is actually not a terrible juice to pay when you're getting VK, who's got some good results here, who's fast, he's in some good equipment. You got Grosjean, who's got limited oval experience, and for him to, not make any mistakes for 500 miles, I think that's asking a lot.
Pato O'Ward versus Joseph Newgarden, two drivers that have a pair of third-place finishes as their career high at the Indianapolis 500 award last year. O'Ward has won on the Oval of Texas. He's won again this year. Basically dead even at minus 115. Penske didn't qualify very well here last year. When I think of O'Ward and Aaron McLaren, I think one of the best pit stops in the entire series. Same for Joseph with Penske. I am so on the fence on this one. It's a current no play for me, but Mike, I'm interested to know which way you're leaning on O'Ward versus Newgarden.
Coin flip for me too. I think it's I think true odds here are probably even money. Of course, the sportsbook's going to take their 15%, so they'll juice it up. O'Ward's somebody who I've had my eye on. I kind of wish I would have gotten in a little sooner on O'Ward after kind of digging in and kind of doing some more research and looking at it. I didn't hit him. I think now he's been sliced. I think he's down 7 or 8-1. Or before you could have got him double digits. He was somebody I wish I would have gotten a hold of at double digits. But at this point right now, minus 115 both ways Newgarden. I think that one's a coin flip. This next one's probably a coin flip too. So that's one where I'm gonna take more information. Let's see what happens in the practices. Let's see what happens. Carb day in qualifying, and then I'll I don't want to spread myself too thin too early.
Colton Herta, the most previous winner in the NTT IndyCar Series, last year front row start, then faded, as even money against Scott Dixon, the Iceman, at minus 130, who last year was the odds-on favorite all month, has started this month as the favorite so far, has been very fast. The closer we get to this, the more I start thinking, Simon Pagenaud has been my pick, but I'm leaning towards Dixon to finally get it done, which is exact opposite of what I've done in the past, because I have faded Scott Dixon. Last year was very easy for me to do because I usually fade the previous year's winner because it's so hard to go back to back, and I usually fade the pole sitter because it's for whatever reason it's so tough to win from the pole. We just don't see it that often. But I'm kind of in love with Scott Dixon at minus 130 here.
Yeah, like I said, this one's a coin flip for me. Like you're right. Like if we go back to what I just said about pedigree and history and knowing their way around the track, Dixon's the obvious favorite there. But Herta's the guy that's been fast, and he's fast everywhere we go. He's pretty much the favorite at every race we go to, especially these road and street courses lately. He proved why last week, obviously. But he doesn't necessarily perform as well in the oval. So I think I'm with you. If I had to lean one way, it would be Dixon.
If I'm not mistaken, and don't quote me, I think Colton's best finish at the 500 was 8th, but don't quote me on that. Again, we're running through the odds here. Burnout Bets, burnoutsports.com. I'm Tony. That's Mike. All these brought to you by Ceasars. They just recently came out with updated odds and as well these matchups that we're going through. All right, the next couple are very, very interesting. Will Power versus Alex Palou. Power even money over last year's runner-up in Palou. Ganassi has been fast. Power is your current points leader. Very consistent all year. This one, I think personally, Mike, is the most difficult one to assess. And we may have a totally different opinion on that after qualifying if Will Power does what he did a year ago and struggles. But right now, based on what we know, this one is very, very tough to judge.
Yeah, which Will are we going to get? You see, this was one of you mentioned. Not many of these have plus money next to their name, and there it sits, plus 100 even money for Will Power. Below the slight favor, you got to pay a little bit if you want to get him. Which Will are we going to get? Are we going to get the guy that barely like had to scrape the wall to get his way into the 500 last year? Or are we going to get the guy running up through the field that won a couple of years back? And this one's tough for me. Obviously, I'm Will Power is one of my favorite guys. I've made probably profited the most off of Will Power in betting IndyCar over the years. So he's a soft spot for me. But Palou, man, that guy. I made a comment on Twitter last week about Dixon used to be my top 3 ATM. It's looking like Palou is taking over. He's learning a few tricks from the master there, and Dixon's on his way down, and Palou's, kind of that guy that's that lock for top threes, and even on ovals, on all tracks. So, man, this is a tough one. This is one, like I said, watch, listen, learn. Maybe it's still there. Maybe you see Power with some speed. If you feel like Penske's going to have some strong cars and they're not going to struggle in qualifying, you maybe jump on Will Power just to get that even money.
The next one is the boss man versus the driver of the number 20. That's Connor Daly versus Ed Carpenter. Carpenter minus 105. I had one of the best 500 miles last year, bringing it home in 5th after a bad pit stop. Connor minus 125 with the most laps last year. I really, really like Ed Carpenter here. This is so tough, and it's crazy that they put 2 cars out of the same stable next to each other in this. But I do love Ed Carpenter at minus 105. Ed is always fast in qualifying. He knows how to get the 500 miles. He knows how to save his equipment. If not for a bad pit stop on the first round of stops last year, who knows where Ed would have been at the finish. He was charging late, as was Simon Pagenaud. Connor has led laps, has had really bad luck. You think about last year, the bad luck that he had after leading all of it. 2019 or 18, we had a really fast car with Andretti, but then faded to an 11th place finish. I'm going to go with the guy who has finished top 3 and finished top 5 at this track multiple times. I'll go with Ed Carpenter at minus 105.
Yeah, this is it's funny. I wonder who's making these odds. We got to find out who that person is, or who's up to no good here. Yeah, it's interesting. They put the teammates, the owner versus the driver together there, and yeah, I'm with you. It's somebody like, if we could bet on qualifying, I think I might have thrown that out there. It'd be nice to have some qualifying betting lines if Ceasar's. Maybe that's something for the future we see. And Ed Carpenter would always be on my list when it came to oval qualifying, especially at Indy. The guy knows his way around. He knows how to go fast. He knows how to qualify. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Ed's had some bad race luck over the years. He has a guy that I know in the past I've had 50, 60, 71 tickets on in this race in years past, and had the heart broken, along with him. I'm sure his is a little worse than mine. But yeah, I'm with you. Give me Ed.
Yeah, I have Ed, and I believe I have him for the race. I put $33 on him since that's his number, and I believe I had him at 50-1, if not mistaken. All right, wrapping up these matchups real quick. Alexander Rossi, Simon Pagenaud, 2 drivers that battled it out for the finish of the 2019 race. Pagenaud won that one. Rossi has had some horrible luck after being very consistent at the 500 his first couple of years. Pagenaud, I've preached about how Pagenaud is definitely a pick for me to win the race. We don't know what Alexander Rossi you're going to get. You talked about, Mike, about Will Power. Which Will Power are we going to get? I'm not sure which Alexander Rossi we'll get, because we've seen in the past him get pissed during a race for a bad pit stop or getting cut off by Oriol Servie, and it kind of affects his emotions throughout the entire 500-mile run. So certainly a lean to me on Simon Pagenaud here.
Yep, I'm with you. We've been pushing the Pagenaud train. Why stop? If you're going to bet him outright, then you got to believe in him in matchups. where he's only got to beat one driver and not 32. And for minus 120, slight favorite. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Rossi, we got Zen Will. We have not gotten Zen Rossi. Maybe he'll turn a corner in his older years, but yeah, give me Pagano.
And the final one here, Elio Castro Neves looking to defend his title against Tony Kanaan. Kanaan in the Chip Ganassi car really wasn't a factor in last year's race. I am still going to, if I had to bet here, and as of right now, I won't, because Kanaan hasn't had the best finishes, but again, at the end of the day, he is in a Ganassi car. It's not the number one Ganassi car in a stable, but it's still a Ganassi car. And Kanaan still is fast around here. A slight edge to me goes to Elio on this one.
Yeah, so this is one that I liked when I saw it. Like right off the page, Helio jumped out at me as I thought he should have been the favorite in this race. I talked about it earlier. The veterans are the ones that don't get around here, except for when I don't think they're with a good car, like Montoya is in a lower level team, second or third tier team. The one thing that does give me pause, like we spoke about, is the fact that Kanaan's in a top tier team, but in their add-on ride, I guess whatever you want to call it for the race. But Helio, he's got a stable ride this year. I'm sure they're putting money into their 500 car program. So I think with all those things put together, plus I think the veteran thing is almost a wash. If anything, I obviously give the lean to the guy that's won the thing 4 times. I think he's getting a little disrespected with this number, and minus 115 is not so bad. So this is one of them this is one, along with the VK one we talked about earlier, jumped out. I might look to grab a little Helio here before. I don't expect either of these guys to qualify great middle of the pack, but I think Helio would be the bet.
We'll see with qualifying coming up this weekend from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the 106th Indianapolis 500. Send us your tweets, send us your slips, what you got in as far as betting so far as we head into qualifications at Burnout Bets, at Tony D Indy, at Indy_bet. If you want Mike to give you any kind of advice as well, feel free to send him any of your questions. He's been doing it a lot longer than me and always has great knowledge when it comes to betting IndyCar and the Indianapolis 500. For Jared Sparkman and Mike, I'm Tony D. We'll see you next week for another edition as we preview and check out the latest odds for the Indianapolis 500 right here on Burnout Sports and Burnout Bets.